Going to this. Hopefully everybody can hear us now. I got to unmute myself as well. Okay, there we go. Let's see. I'm going to double check the stream here. Myself as well. Okay, I can hear myself on the stream. It looks like everything is going okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for being here. If this is Saturday morning, afternoon, or evening, then you're watching this live on Retro Gaming Live TV. Welcome. Hey, CVG, how you doing? Good morning, afternoon. It still feels like morning for me, even though I just woke up. So anyway, we are going to be doing a chat all about a lot of Mario on mostly the NES and Super Nintendo, but who knows where it'll take us. So if this is your first time watching, yes, you are live. Feel free to dump questions or comments in the chat. If not, I assure you we got plenty to talk about, even if not. So feel free, listen away. If you just want to lounge and vibe, that's totally cool as well. All of that's fair game here. And I think we're pretty close to being ready. Let me make, I got to always make a local recording. In case you're ever wondering, folks, always make a local recording. Okay.
Always.
Rupert, any questions before we get started or anything like that?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Actually, you know, can you talk just a little bit more, like just maybe some ABCs or something so I can get a level? I want to make sure, actually, I just remember to check audio.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Perfect. That sounds great. Okay. Okie doke. Let me put this over here. Got my notes over here. Yeah, one more sec. Sorry. Notes just need to be refreshed. Okay, here we go. Actually, one last thing. I forgot what episode this is. It's 85 or 86? Ah, crap. Hey, when that happens. Episodes, video. Looks like 81, 82, 80. So it's 86. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, a podcast that features conversations with speedrunners, developers, content creators, and everything in between. Thank you so much for being here and listening and liking and subscribing and all that stuff people say at the beginning of videos. I don't know. Got a good one for you here today. This is episode 86 with dogs barking right now, which is actually going to be I'm Rupert, you could probably relate to that.
Yeah, a little bit.
This is episode 86. We're going to be talking all about Mario with roopert83. Rupert, thanks so much for being here. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am doing great. I guess, well, first, we almost always start with, like, how did you get your start in gaming? And, like, you know, what was tiny little Rupert, what was kind of the first games that you played? And then how did you get started with video games in general?
As far as like from the speedrunning streaming aspect?
No, just like what were some of the first games you played as a little kid?
Oh, the first game. Okay, that far back. Okay, so I got my NES for Christmas when I was a kid. I think I was 5 years old. But yeah, let's see, what year would that have been? Like about 87, 88, something like that.
We're like the same exact age though, it must be. Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so I remember I got that. I was so small I could barely hold up the box that it came in. And I like dropped it, and I like started freaking out because I thought I'd destroyed it before we even took it out of the box. But so I got the typical NES bundle with the console, 2 controllers. I had the orange zapper, so it came with Mario and Duck Hunt. And so that's the first game I played, and I remember struggling through that quite a bit, and especially with like I didn't totally understand with it's like every time you'd beat a world, it's like with the princesses in another castle and stuff, and I was so confused by that. And I was like, well, how do you find her? It's like every time you get to the end of it, she's not there. It's like, how do you make her show up? And I remember I ended up asking a friend or something like that I met up with at one point, and he explained it to me, and I think he told me about the warp zone and 1, 2, and 4-2 had to skip all that too. But I remember also struggling like through some of the other worlds, like 6-3, the one that's sort of like a monochrome looking level. I remember that one. I don't know why I particularly remember that one frustrating me so much, but I remember that one I was really frustrated.
I can't believe you got that far as a kid. I mean, without warps, I could never make it to World 8 as like a 6 or 7-year-old.
Yeah, I did beat the game a few times. Wow. I also remember that huge gap in 8-2 toward the end of the level.
The worst.
I remember that one. That was a big one too that I hardly made it across, but I did beat the game several times, and that's how I got started. And I also had Mario 2, Mario 3. What else did I have? Well, those are the main Mario games I had. I had like Dr. Mario and like some racing games and things like that too. So I was pretty young when I got started, and then I remember I got the Super Nintendo. I actually saved up the money to buy that. So I remember going into Walmart with the money I'd saved up, allowance money and stuff, because I got that and stuff too. I had to save up for a good while for that too. But I remember the day I went and I bought that thing, and it was probably one of the happiest days of my life. So I went in there and handed the money, and I walked out with a Super Nintendo.
I didn't have Super Nintendo as a kid. What was was it like $200 or $300? I don't remember how much it was when it came out back then. It was expensive.
I don't know how much it was when it came out. When I bought it, it was down to like $150.
Okay, so you had a little bit later on in its lifespan.
Yeah, it was a little bit later on. I didn't get it like at launch, but I feel like it was maybe like $300 or something. I don't remember for sure, honestly, on that.
Even $150, especially to a teenager, that's got to feel like
like early '90s money.
Oh, yeah,
that's quite a bit of money.
No kidding.
but you know, I had some of the popular things with that, with Mario World and All Stars and Mario Kart and Turtles in Time. I had a lot of or you know, quite a few of the popular games for that, but it just kind of went on from that, and let's see, I pretty much had all Nintendo consoles. I had an N64.
Oh, nice.
And then I think the console I had after that was the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox were the next gen consoles I had. I never had a GameCube until a few years ago. But then it just went from that and then went to Xbox 360 and Xbox One. And I guess with handhelds, I've got the original Game Boy. I've got a teal Game Boy Color. I think they both still work. I've still got them. And a NES themed 3DS. And I think that's mostly it for handhelds that I've had. Well, and I guess the Switch kind of counts as both.
Yeah, right. That's it. Apologies for my dogs again, by the way. They're just there must be something going on outside that's they're usually not this active.
I don't hear mine's taking a nap behind me right now. So
I think mine will be there in a second as soon as the commotion stops. So you mentioned the Mario games. You definitely found it. I mean, I'm really impressed that you were able to beat those as a kid. Any other has it always been like platforming type games for you, or did you enjoy any of the other maybe sports or Zelda games or anything like that? Have you ventured outside of like the platforming as a kid?
I did. I didn't really get into Zelda that much until Ocarina of Time. I had Zelda 1 as a kid, but it was so confusing for me that I just didn't I mean, to be honest, like the hints don't really tell you much, or it's very cryptic and stuff, translation stuff too. But I guess that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. So I didn't play Zelda 2. I didn't play Link to the Past, which is actually the big regret that I had as a kid. I didn't play Link to the Past. The next Zelda game I had was Ocarina of Time. I didn't actually play Link to the Past until I was in college, I think.
Oh, same here. Yeah.
So, I went back and was like, man, I missed out on this one and stuff just because I was so frustrated with Zelda 1
right.
and I didn't understand it. And so I've done some of that. Let's see, I've been into some racing games and stuff like that too. And I guess later on in my gaming stuff, I used to do a lot of first person shooters with like Halo and Call of Duty. Like I was stuck on that for quite a few years with my college friends and stuff. We'd hop on weekends and stuff when we'd just play for hours, online multiplayer and stuff like that. So
I have yet to meet a person who had the original Xbox and didn't play Halo. I'm sure they're out there, but I have never met them. So
yeah, it's I had what kind of got me hooked on that was I picked up Halo 2, and that's when they had those like 1 or 3 month trial subscription to Xbox Live.
Oh yeah.
So I activated that code, and that they got my money after that. So
got you hooked.
They got me hooked on that. So I've been a little all over the place. I used to play some sports games a little bit. Not that I was particularly great at those, except for golf. I was actually pretty good at the golf games, but the rest of them were just kind of have some fun with it. I wasn't that great at it, but I've RPGs is something I really haven't played a lot of outside of like SMRPG and a couple other things and stuff. But
totally. So what got you started then? How did you get interested in, or what was like your first experience with speedrunning? What was the thing that got you into speedrunning?
So I didn't really know anything about it until I found out about it in the fall of 2012. And I don't even remember how I came across it because I didn't really know about like Twitch or anything like that. I do about Justin TV, but
right.
But I somehow found out about, I think GDQ was having a really fun marathon for the Hurricane Sandy that came through that year.
Yeah.
I believe that's how I found out about the whole speedrunning thing. I don't remember how I found out about it. I must have come across some forum or something. I honestly don't remember. But I found out about that, and I started watching speedruns, and I got to know who like some of the popular folks were at that time, like Siglimic with SM64, and I guess ZFG, and I watched a fair amount of like SM64 and Ocarina of Time stuff to begin with.
It felt like at that time that was like the easiest stuff to find, because that's about when I got into about 2013. And if you got on Justin TV or Twitch, I can't remember which one it was at the time, but you could see Siglemic running at some point. It felt like the guy never stopped speedrunning.
But so I started watching some of that stuff, and then I found out about Speedruns Live, which is mostly irrelevant in my opinion now, but it was a big thing then. That's where you found speedrunners to watch and stuff. And the IRC channels that you had for the, even if you didn't do races, a lot of people were in the IRC channels with SRL, because that time is like we didn't have speedrun.com, we didn't have Discord. We had Skype, TeamSpeak. I don't know if anybody used Ventrilo or not, but the communities I was in, we had Skype and TeamSpeak. We didn't have leaderboards like we do now. The leaderboards were on wiki sites, essentially, and they were poorly updated a lot of times. But I guess I'm getting straying off the original question there. So I found out about that. So I started watching stuff, and then I started exploring a little bit into, the games I grew up with, like SMB1 and SMB3, and so that's kind of how I found primarily like SMB3 runners to start off with. Like I found, like Mitch was already established. I'd found Mitch. I think the first person I actually followed on Twitch after I finally created an account, which took me a few months. I watched no account for a few months. I finally signed up for one. I think when Chuck Attacks was the first person I followed, which he hasn't really streamed that much in a number of years, not like he used to and stuff. But if you're watched SMB3 stuff back from that era, you probably know who that is. But he was the first person I watched, and I watched Mitch a little bit, and I started watching like a few of the other runs and stuff like that. I think I started watching SMW and SMB1 and things like that. And I found out about SRL, and I was like, it'd be kind of cool if I tried out this whole racing thing and stuff. I'd never streamed before or anything like that. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool. And I probably debated on it for like 2 or 3 months before one day I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to try it. So I got my Twitch account and I got my SRL account, and I did what they call like a blind race for SMB3 to World 3, I believe. And I didn't know what that meant.
What does that mean? Like, okay. I haven't heard that before.
What's that? A blind race?
Yeah, but you run it blind to World 3. Is that what you're saying?
It's like you haven't played the game before.
Oh no,
like you haven't played the game. Yeah, like you haven't played the game before, but you're going to meet this goal and all that stuff. So like they hadn't really done speed runs or played the game, and they were going to beat World 3. So I didn't know what that meant. So I hopped in there, and of course I didn't know who either people were at the time, right. But the two people I was racing against were LinkDead and Kakusho. So they've both been known as SMW runners and stuff, upper tier SMW runners, and I didn't know who they were. So I jumped in there, and I was super, super nervous. Like my heart rate was like through the roof with nervousness, with this whole like streaming thing and racing against people, and since I've been trying to learn the game a little bit and all that stuff too, I did the race and I won by quite a bit. And then I later found out what the term meant and stuff, and I was like, oh, they haven't played the game before. It's like, oh, okay. So that was the first race I had, and that was on March the 30th, 2013. So that was technically my first stream.
And now you can say that you've beaten LinkDead and Kojo in a race. How funny!
So
that's awesome.
That was just kind of funny when I went back later and I learned about knew who everybody was and stuff like that. So technically SMB3 was my first speed run, but shortly thereafter I also started learning SMB1, and Cosmic was already established as up and coming top tier runner of the game, and Darbian started about the same time I did, so I got to know Darbian pretty much about the same time, and we did a bunch of races together and things like that. And there's still quite a few people that started roughly around that time that for the ones that still stream and stuff, I still have pretty good connections with. But there for at least like the first year and stuff, I mostly did races. I didn't do much standalone RTA runs and stuff. I did mostly races with people, which is, because I enjoyed it. You hop on a voice chat and do races back to back and all that. And it was a lot of fun. And I kind of missed that part of it, to be honest.
That's such an interesting way to get started. There's so many things you mentioned. I want to chat really quick. Number one, Chuck, he's been on the podcast, and for anybody, so my first speedrun game was Mario 3, and he had, he did the tutorials, like there was just, and he was for a while, he was like him and Mitch were like basically the two people I was only aware of because they were, they streamed Mario 3, so game I was into. So right there with you on that kind of stuff. Secondly, what an interesting way to get into speedrunning through racing, because at least from my understanding, like that really, I've done some races and that puts the pressure on you like right away. So much I feel, at least in my own speedrunning, has been, man, towards I get to the end of a run, I'm on a good pace, and then the pressure starts, right? I don't want to make a mistake, but when you're racing, that pressure's on right from the beginning. So what an interesting way, an introduction. Do you think that's helped you out at your speedrunning at all? That was the way that you started doing this?
I think so. Everybody's different, but I think that definitely helped me with, it's like even if you're just doing a regular RTA run and stuff, like, it's like once you get to cross that point of like, oh, I'm on pace to have a good run or something, and for most people, the pressure starts building and stuff. And, sometimes it doesn't work out, but I feel like doing so many races that I did and stuff, it's kind of helped me learn how to kind of rein that in a little bit, and kind of, try to keep your cool and stuff like that. With everybody, mistakes are going to happen due to pressure and things like that. But I feel like the racing aspect of it definitely helped with me trying to, keep that under control, and try to stay focused with what I'm doing and things like that. I did a lot of races. I think I've logged over 800 races on SRL. It's a lot of races. Yeah.
Dang, that's awesome. I mean, that makes a little bit more sense now. Why I think one of the things about racing too is it teaches you how to deal with adversity, right? Like you have to keep going, you can't stop. So quite often I'll see you make adjustments in these runs. When you're doing all 4 any percent or warpless or anything like that, you keep going, you don't stop.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with it. It's like you can't, make one little mistake and hit the reset button. Like you'll never get through it with that. So it. When you're faced with, you have to, make a decision, try to make a smart decision and stuff. I feel like racing helped with that quite a bit because, like, especially with like multi-game runs or just like races in general, it's typically not if something goes wrong, it's when something goes wrong. That you've got to try to adjust for that and minimize the impact that'll have on your performance and all that good stuff. But yeah, I did a lot of racing that first year.
So then what was like the first run you grinded for like a PB then? When did you finally decide that, hey, I'm going to try to get a better time in a game?
I'd say SMB 1 was probably the first one I really worked on for that. Which actually was warpless more than it was any percent. I did any percent some, but I enjoyed doing warpless. But that's probably the first game in category that I worked on more than the others to get a pretty solid time for that, which I think within a few months when I started streaming, I think I got it down to like a 1935.
Whoa.
Which was, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was pretty good in those days. And things were actually also different in that most of the upper level runners played small only Mario for warpless. Like I think Andrew G did fire strats, but most of the others did small only Mario through warpless. I know Cosmic did, because I remember Cosmic finally gave that up, and he was kind of sad. It's like, I love playing small fire Mario, but it's faster to do or small Mario.
Small Mario, yeah.
But it's faster to do fire Mario and stuff. But I remember there were quite a few of us that enjoyed doing small only warpless. But yeah, so things have changed with that. But I think that's the first category I really worked on, and then probably SMB3 warpless was the next one I really for that.
Those are, with all due respect, those are brutal categories. Like SMB 1 and Lost Levels Warpless are some of my favorite ones to watch, because anything, it's such a, I know it's 20 something minutes or whatever, but and Warpless for SMB 3, there's a lot that can go wrong. And like, I mean, nowadays the Hacksaw been on the podcast, Mitch has been on the podcast. Like we'll talk World 7 seems to be one of the defining moments, and obviously Hands in World 8, but in SMB 3, but either way, both of these categories are brutal, and for you to take them on, I mean, that's a lot of resets.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I guess, let's see. So it's interesting you jumped from SMB1 warpless or SMB1 over to SMB3. When do you decide, or what happens that makes you think about starting to run multiple Mario games at once, or try to put these together? Was anybody doing that at the time, or was there a community around that?
So we had a handful of people that kind of just started doing that, like within the first few months of like, we didn't have leaderboards for it or anything like that. It was just like, let's see, I know Darbian did it for a bit. Deathwing, he did that with us some too, and we had a few other people where we just kind of, randomly threw some games together. Like sometimes we do like 1-3 in World Warpless, which for SMW Warpless was essentially no Star World for the category on that. And then sometimes we do like 5 games where we did like 1, and we did Lost Levels on the All Stars version, but the rest were the original versions, just because none of us really had the actual FDS version
right.
of Lost Levels and stuff. So, it's very just kind of, hey, let's just do this today, and just race that and stuff too. So I got started with that pretty early, but we had a lot of fun with that, and it was just it's kind of chill in its own way, just because you didn't have to have perfection with it and stuff. It's just do multiple runs and have some fun with it, chit chat with people on voice chat and all that.
So this is one of the categories that I've always dreamed at some point I'm going to do. And because like yourself, I got a day job, so it's like I don't get a ton of time to speed run. But one of the games I've always put on my back burner, I'm always going to do it at some point, has been All Stars, all 4, probably the any percent category, because that's what I have time for and stuff like that. When let's first start with All Stars. When did you first try an All Stars run, and what was like your first attempts? Were you doing all 4, all 5? What was some of the first attempts of All Stars?
Let's see. I started doing the All Stars runs, like the all 4 and all 5. I started those in, let me think.
Folks, when you've been doing this for 10 years, this is what happens.
2015, 2016, 2017, somewhere around that. I don't.
Wow.
Time is not a thing I'm great at now, but or like remember things in the past. Somewhere around that area is when I started that. I think the leaderboards actually started in 2016 or 2017. But that's around the time that I got started with those. I only did all 4 there for a bit, because all 5 requires you to have the cartridge with the SMW on it.
Yeah.
And I do remember finding that in a local retro game store. That was actually, that was before I moved out to Denver, so that was probably 2015 or 2016, I guess, when I got that. But I remember finding it in a retro game store, and it was like $50 or $60. It wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
Because they're not like rare, but you don't find them nearly as often as you do just the regular 4-game cartridge. But that's around the time that I got started with that.
For you, what were the differences going from the NES versions of the Mario games to the All-Stars version?
Each one of them has their own small differences in feel. And I guess getting used to those wasn't too big of a hurdle for me, just because I was already kind of used to jumping in between multiple different games at the same time, which that by itself is something that takes a while to get used to, just because, each game's got different physics and things like that. And just, fluidly jumping between one game and the other, pick it up, without skipping a beat and making mistakes is, I think, something that everybody has to get used to a little bit. After you do it enough, you just do it and you don't think about it nearly that much. But to begin with, it's kind of a hurdle, and you spend the first level trying to remember how the physics work.
Where am I supposed to press jump?
But each game on the All Stars version has some differences. SMB1 feels mostly the same, except for when you're big and you break blocks. It has a little bit of a mechanical difference with that, in that it can actually just kind of stop you in place when you break the bricks if you're big, which is kind of an annoyance that most runners will complain about. And Lost Levels is pretty much the same with that. Lost Levels, because I typically do Luigi, and he's got the different physics from Mario. They actually improved it on the All Stars version, and that his acceleration is better, and he's not. He feels less like trying to control a tank on ice. So, and SMB2, That one actually mechanically feels about the same. I mean, there's a few differences and stuff, but it feels pretty similar. And SMB3 is really similar, except for the camera. The camera's terrible in that version. I'm not gonna lie.
Don't know what they were thinking
awful
with that one. That's one that's still baffling to me.
Yeah, but as far as like most of the other tricks and how the physics feel and stuff, like the rest of it's pretty much the same, even if it looks a little different. But so getting used to those, just overall from playing the originals weren't that big of a hurdle for me.
That's super interesting, and I think that's probably I probably had the similar experience to what you're describing is similar physics, just some slight difference. I'm trying to think. I think I might have even SMB2. I'm trying to remember if there's any. Its camera feels very similar. All those kind of things are the same. Now when you jumped over to the All Stars version, did you grind for a PB, or was this one thing where you're jumping into races again? What was your experience with All Stars?
We used to do some weekly races with, let's see. Yeah, I think how I really started getting into it is we had like all 4 Warpless weekly races that we would do with, who all was in that group? Walther Blue, Sky Bills, Darbian, All Glib. I think there's a couple of other people that joined us in for some of those too. We did that for a while, like every Saturday for, I don't remember how long that went on, but for a while we'd have like we'd hop in a voice chat and stuff when we do all 4 Warpless race, and that's kind of how I got to really, I guess that's really what got me into running those types of categories and stuff on the All Stars version, was we did those races for a while, and I just kind of expanded from there.
So I'm curious because like I think this is I gotta be honest, for me personally, one of the things has kind of been the intimidation of doing a run that's so long, and what if I screw up? I mean, Lost Levels has been my big one that I haven't quite learned and gotten through yet, just because it's intimidating. I see a hard game, I feel it's hard, what are some of the things that have helped you like to get over, like, not to just going for doing all these games back to back to back? Because I gotta tell you, as somebody who just watches it still looks, it's really impressive what you're doing, so I'm like, oh man, it's still intimidating to try it on my own.
I mean, for me, it's been just, kind of, small, slow improvements here and there. Some of it's just doing, sometimes it's, better, safer strats, not always the fastest strats, but more consistent things. And then, and part of it too is just me learning that, there are some really fast strats, but sometimes it's not really worth it to go for it, because the time that you lose from, dying or messing that up's worse than just, playing it safe. So yeah, it just kind of depends. And I guess kind of what helped me get into running these multi-game categories, anyway, is just because I'd already kind of been doing it for quite a while anyway. And I was already familiar with all the games, which that's one of the bigger things anyway and stuff, is like, there's not a ton of people that know all the games.
Yeah.
All 4 or 5 games that well. And that's really one of the bigger parts of it too, and stuff, is actually just knowing those games and remembering the level layouts and what you're supposed to do for each one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, at this point, do you get a chance to practice at all, or some of the individual stuff? Or are you just mostly just trying to, at this point with the experience you have, is there practice for you? Or are you just doing runs? Like, how does this work?
I mostly just turn on the console and play. Well, that's actually been kind of my thing for most of the time I've been streaming. Is it's not a methodology that I recommend, it's just one that I do, is that, yeah, you should probably practice, and I would probably do better in some aspects if I did practice more, but I'm not a person that enjoys practice that much. And then of course, I've got a full-time job, I've got a dog and other adult things to do and stuff too, so the practice kind of doesn't happen much. So it just usually turns into me just turning on the console and playing, and like, hope for the best.
That's interesting. So I'm curious then, like, from your perspective, did you ever like try to explore routes, or and I know in Mario there's not a ton of different variations on the routes, but have you tried strats on your own, or exploring some of those things that might make the run go quicker? Or is this something where you've just really tried just your own process, just going through the game and things like that?
I guess for the things that I've tried to figure out and things like that have been more like safety and backup strats, I guess, which I do have some that people have named after me. But yeah, it's like, that's typically what I found out. Is like, I found out, in several games, alternate backup or safer ways to do things and stuff like that. I know like well, actually, I guess there's one in particular that it's actually not really my strat, but they've named it after me anyway. But for SMB2, when you do there's a specific setup that I do for the Fry Guy kill with the blocks and all that stuff. They for some reason started calling it the roop strat, which is the one I pretty much almost always use, even though it's not really the one, or it's not really one that I came up with, but I was apparently the person who used it the most. They just named it after me. But I've got a few other things too with like 6.6 and SMB3. I've got a strat that some people have picked up for like a safety thing and stuff like that too. So,
yeah, what are they? Do you mind telling us? Because that's the stuff I'm super interested in, is like some of these unique things. So
for 6.6, of course, you'd typically only be playing that in 100%. But what that strat entails is like that assumes that you're going into the level with the tail, and you typically try to get P speed and you zoom through the water and all that stuff. But the little strat that I have is like, if you can make it to that last section where you get out of the water and it's got the 3 spikes on the floor, I usually just intentionally just damage boost through that with the tail and get P speed and just run up to the end and go through it that way. And it's from a few people that have picked that up for a while and did some testing and stuff. They said it's just a minimal time loss with that, but it's a lot more comfortable to get through that last section if you can damage boost than try to avoid all the spikes and you got the fish jumping out of the little one tile pools of water and stuff like that. So things like that.
It's kind of interesting that you know, with Mario specifically playing either the All-Stars or just playing, you know, all the NES versions, in that individually, Mario is some of the most optimized speedrunning we have. You know, like that it's one of these things where individuals have really grinded down some just absolutely mind-boggling, incredible times. Yet, as far as this category goes, where we're arbitrarily putting these things back to back to back and running a timer on it, there's still so much availability and places like that. What's the deepest, or how often do you get into a spot where you're 2 or 3 games in and you have to reset? Because it seems like there's still like a fair, regardless of where you're at, there's flexibility throughout the run.
Yeah. As far as resetting that, that just kind of depends. I mean, like typically or for the longer runs too, like if I'm like a certain amount into it, like if I'm well over halfway through it and stuff, there's a fair chance that I may just go ahead and finish out the rest of the run, especially if it's getting kind of later in my stream anyway, because I don't have time to reset and start over another several hour run for that. But it's just kind of, I don't have like a specific, I guess, set point for that. Is kind of what I'm feeling. But you know, if it's within the first half of the entire run, yeah, I'll probably reset if something catastrophic happens. Like if I game over an SMB2, which is not very hard to do. Or you know, if I use the warp whistle accidentally in warpless or 100%, you know, stuff like that, yeah, I'm probably just going to go ahead and reset that. But yeah, it's like for the most part, most of the time, there's times that you can pick up in each game and things like that. Some of them are fairly tight. Like SMB1's usually pretty consistent in that max I could save like 5 or 10 seconds. But then you have some games where sometimes you can save like a few minutes, like SMB3 with its RNG will sometimes give you that buffer, and lost levels is, well, it's lost levels. So, you know, it's hard to get everything to go smoothly with that game, just in general.
Do you have a Mario that you prefer, a Mario game that you prefer, or which one you like the physics the most, or maybe one you spent more time with? I'm curious, like, what your own personal preference is out of all these Mario games that you read.
Generally, I guess I'd go with SMB3 on that. That one's also sometimes one of the more frustrating because of the RNG and the little nuances with keeping P speed and things like that. But as far as the physics overall, well, SMW is pretty good too, but it's also got some little nuances with that as well, with the varying flight speed and varying jump heights and things like that, which are also kind of annoying. But for the physics I like the best, I'd probably put it between those two.
your own journey, because you've been doing this now for so long, have you ever found yourself using any tutorials, or is there anything you like recommend on that side of things? Because one of the things I'm it's mostly selfish. At some point, I'd like to try this myself, but I think there are people out there who, you know, would consider doing something like this if there was maybe something to ease the hurdle to try to get through all these games.
The tutorial for like all 4 or 5 of the games.
Or did you use it even for individual games? Were there anything you used in your own journey, or is this something you just kept playing the game and tried to get better at it?
I've used tutorials for some stuff. Of course, that's been a long time ago. I've made a few tutorials myself. I made a set of tutorials for the SMB2 All-Stars version that I put out a couple of years ago.
Nice.
But of course, it covers both. Well, pretty much any of the categories, really, just because of the way that I formatted it. You just pick the levels that you're wanting to go for. But yeah, it's like I did reference some tutorial stuff. But a lot of it, and some of it was just me figuring things out on my own, which is also why I have strats that commentators are like, why did he do it that way? I have my own weird strats of doing things that kind of throw people off, and it's actually kind of funny. So like if I'm doing tournament races and stuff, like I'll do things that people aren't used to seeing, and they like stop for a second. I was like, why did he do it that way? That's the way I learned it. So, but as far as like tutorials, it's hard to give like suggestions on like the best ones and stuff for like individual games, just because
so many good ones.
People learn differently too. Like some people, and it's also what you're going for too. Like, you know, some of the tutorials will be like a lot of the upper tier world record level strats, and then some things will be, you know, a little more simplistic, and some things are explained in extreme detail, and some things are not explained in extreme detail. Right. And some people like it this way, and some people like it that way.
Everyone learns differently.
But I guess as far as my general recommendation on like trying to pick up and learn these games, is just the way I've typically gone about it with learning, like, well, pretty much any game, not just like these Mario games, is you know, do a few, you know, just like casual-ish playthroughs and stuff, run a timer on it, and I've just like slowly implemented like, you know, a little strat here, a little strat there, you know, just start bringing my time down a little bit. I've never been much of a person that has been like, well, I'm going to learn all the hard strats even before I start doing runs and stuff. Like, I guess some people can do that. That's not typically how that works out for me and stuff. It's like, I'll just do it little by little and you know, improve at my own pace. But at the same time, I feel no pressure to be like, you know, that my worth is what my time on the leaderboard is or anything like that. Like, I don't, overall, I don't really care about that so much. You know, cause I've been around for a while too. It's like, yeah, it's cool to improve your time and get higher on the leaderboard, but at the end of the day, like, it's not what I really care about and stuff. It's more of hanging out with the community and get to know people and having fun with it is how it is. So I just do things at my own pace and however I want to do it.
That explains quite a bit, I gotta say, because I do enjoy watching your stream, and I don't see you lose your cool very often. Even in some situations, I'd be like, I'd probably start using the F word and everything. So I'm like, yeah, right. But when you don't have that stress of, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm just doing this to improve my own time and all that kind of stuff. That's a good approach, I think. That's a good mindset, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll get a little salty with the game and stuff, like everybody does. But not? You know, I just I kind of know my limitations, and that's also why I don't really grind individual categories to like a super optimized level and stuff like that. It's just because I don't have fun with that. You know, for the people who want to grind that down for that and stuff, you know, that's awesome. That's just not really my thing. If I'm not having at least some fun with it, then it's not really worth it for me to be doing it in the first place. And you know, so like, say like I guess let's say, for instance, SMB 180%, just the regular NES 80%. After like, I finally got a sub 5 after like 8 years, just because I disliked the category so much that I just never ran it. Right. And I actually had a 300,000 point channel point redemption on my stream that I didn't think anyone would actually ever redeem. No. And it was like SMB 1 sub 5, you know, it's like I'll work on it until I get it. And like a couple days after I put that up, someone redeemed it, and I was like, oh, I guess I have to do it now. So you know, I did work on that, and I finally got the sub 5, and I told people that once I got the sub 5, I'm retiring from the category. That's it. I don't care if it's a 459.989, which whatever the last frame is before
Right.
5 flat and stuff. It's like I'm done. And then people are like, "Are you going to lower your time?" I'm like, "Nope,
No.
I'm good." I have no desire to put myself through that just to lower my time by a little bit. You know, I have. That's just one of those. It's not for me things. Like I have nothing against anyone who wants to do that. It's just I have no interest in it for myself.
So that's super interesting. You were around before sub 5 was like a thing, and then you know, now it's a channel point redemption that you actually grind for. How wild is it to see something like that, where the category has been so well defined at this point that not anybody, but I mean most people can grind for a sub 5 at this point. We have the strats to teach people to do that.
It's very different now than what it used to be. So I mean, like a few people did have sub 5s, like when I started, like Andrew G did.
Right.
There's a few other people that did. And actually, I think in like 2013, 2014, somewhere around that era, I had like a 503, and I was in the top 20 for the category.
Whoa.
For 80%, and I just never really improved it. And now I'm like 400th place, something like that.
There's literally almost 400 people who have a sub 5. It's kind of wild.
It's so different now, just because, especially for console players, like we didn't have a lot of the tools and stuff that we do now. It's like we didn't really have flash carts,
Right.
Flash carts and practice ROMs. I mean, you could get a Game Genie. I had a Game Genie. I've got one here somewhere. That could help a little bit with, like, starting on specific worlds and stuff like that. But there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of technology that's evolved since that era that makes learning and practice much more efficient and things like that. Just because, like, when I started playing the games, like, there's so much more stuff that we know now that we didn't know then, as far as stuff that humans can do anyway. But yeah, it's like having practice ROMs and flash carts and all that stuff too. It's made a world of difference with learning and practicing the game compared to how I used to do it, which was, okay, I got 3 lives to practice this level, and then I'm going to game over, and then I got to get back there again to practice it 3 more times before I game over again.
Yeah. No, that's so real. I mean, most of the games I speedrun are on TurboGrafx 16, and we didn't have a flash cart with save states until like a few months ago. So it's kind of been a game changer, but I know your pain, at least on that level, that, the way that I could practice is hopefully there's a continue on this level. That's,
Yeah. I mean, you could practice on the emulator, but
Sure.
the problem with that is if you were a console player, it was because of the input delay between console and emulator. It didn't work. I mean, I tried it, but it didn't work out that well. It's just because if you're practicing something that requires at least fairly precise inputs, like once you develop that muscle memory for it on emulator, and then you're trying to transfer it over to console, it's like it's all off, and it's like, well, that didn't really help so much because now I have to relearn it.
So true. That's almost the curse of playing on console. Although it's amazing how far emulation has come. It's if you only play on emulation, you're probably going to do fine because it so accurately represents what the console does. But like if you play it all on console, it's really tough to go between the two, to say the least.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask another question. So you've done something called, and by the way, I didn't even realize this was a category until probably like 6 months ago, multiple classic Mario games. There's a pentathlon and there's a decathlon. What the hell are those?
Okay, so the pentathlon is basically, it's basically all 5 4+ or 100% or 80%, except that it's on the original game or the original versions. So it's,
oh man,
SMB 1, 2, and 3 on the NES version, Lost Levels on the FDS version, and SMW still on Super Nintendo, but it's essentially all 5 4+ or 100%, except it's on the versions. That's really what it boils down to. There's a little bit of differences with Lost Levels and how that game behaves between the 2 versions, but for the short answer, it's just basically that. It's just the NES all 5 or all 4. Or yeah, all 5. Sorry, pentathlon is 5. Sorry. Decathlon is it's a 10-game speed run. So that covers first it's SMB, which is the arcade version of SMB1. There's you can play it on your flash card stuff, but it's the arcade version. Like for those of you old enough to have seen the actual arcade machines, that's what it is. Like before you start the game, you have to hit the button to actually put coins in it.
Yes.
So it's that one. It's SMB1, Lost Levels 2, 3 on the original NES/FDS versions. Mario Land 1 and 2.
Oh, Mario Land, nice.
Mario Land 1 and 2, Mario All-Stars, which for the purposes of that category counts as one game, even though there's 4 on it. So you essentially get 13 games for the price of 10. But that because you get to play through the All-Stars versions as well. And then there's SMW, and then there's Yoshi's Island, which is the longest of, well, at least at this point from what I've done and stuff with Yoshi's Island, which is the longest. I've only done warpless for that. I have not done 100%. And I haven't done any percent. Any percent allows you to do like some like big warps and stuff like that, like glitches and stuff like that, kind of like Critus warp type stuff and things like that. So I wasn't super interested in that one. And 100%, considering that it's already an 8+ hour category, and then having to think of Yoshi's Island 100%, where you have to collect all the red coins and the flowers and stuff. I'm a person who enjoys long speed runs, and and I feel like I'm kind of built for that. But even thinking about that, even for me, is a little much, especially since I don't know Yoshi's Island 100% part of it too. Because I would say that just that game alone would probably take me 4, 5, 6 hours to do 100% just by itself, just because I don't know it that well. So we've just stuck with warpless.
You mentioned it's an over 8-hour run, and I'm super impressed with anything that goes over a couple of hours for a speed run, to be honest. So like, how do you dedicate the time? How do you pace yourself? How do you go to the bathroom? How does an 8-hour run work?
So with that, which I've been trying to work a little bit on, trying to give a little extra leeway as far as like, bathroom breaks and stuff like that too. So currently, well, pretty much the way that the rules are set up right now, I don't change it, is that you get like about 30 seconds to switch in between games that doesn't count against you. But I'm trying to work on implementing some time for like bathroom breaks and stuff like that, like 10 or 15 minutes or something like that within the run that doesn't count against you, because currently it does. So basically what it's turned into is go as quickly as you can. I think
an Iron Man type thing.
I've done like 4 or 5 runs with that, and I think I had food delivered to my house a couple of times and stuff too. So like while I was in like a cutscene or something like that, I try to run outside, and grab the food off the porch, and bring it back in and eat while I'm playing. So, but I'm trying to see if we can kind of chill that out a little bit. It's like it's like I get the whole intent of doing it all back to back to back and stuff. But like if you got to get up and move a little bit, or take a bathroom break and stuff like that, like I feel like that shouldn't really count against you within reason.
I've seen more and more communities start to adopt some of the things. The biggest one for me has been Breath of the Wild, where if you're doing a 100% run of Breath of the Wild, you actually get a full 24-hour break. I mean, you can take a full day's break, and our own well-being, I'm totally down for stuff like this, especially when, there's not many people attempting the decathlon, to say the least. So the nice thing is you have to agree upon this with just a few community members. But regardless, like it seems something that seems reasonable like this. And if people want to go the Iron Man route and do the whole thing, that nobody's stopping anybody from doing it. That's the cool thing about it,
Yeah, but it's a different type of speed run. Even just putting that aside and stuff. Like even it's just maintaining your focus for that long. The first run I did of it took a little over 11 hours actually, and I've knocked it down to 8. What's a little over 8.5? I think is the last one I put up, I believe.
It blows my mind that you have Yoshi's Island on there. So I've only done one episode of Yoshi's Island stuff, and it was with Trihex. We were talking way back in the day, GDQ stuff. And it's like, I mean, the 100%, I was just checking, the times are still 2 hours and 20 minutes for the top tier runners at 100% of Yoshi's Island. So the fact that you're even, that's kind of, I mean, that would have to be one of my wild cards as well, because that's not a short game regardless.
Yeah. Watching Yoshi's Island 100% runs is insane. Like the amount of precision they have to do with throwing the eggs to pick up all the coins and the flowers and stuff like that too.
Unreal.
It's a whole different level of a speed run that I just haven't really seen in a lot of different games and stuff.
No.
Like even Warpless is very chill compared to that, just because you're not constantly trying to pick up all the little extra coins and stuff. So it's a very crazy speed run.
I enjoy Yoshi's Island quite a bit casually. I've played through it probably only once or twice, and yet the mechanics to me felt so, it's such a different type of game than all the other Mario games, at least in my opinion. So the fact that it's part of it, that's a really good. Was this your idea, or how did this whole category get started?
That category was come up, Barnell came up with that category when they created the leaderboards, and I don't remember what year it was, but they kind of came up with that. So usually the question I get is like, well, why is All Stars in it? And I was like, well, I didn't make the category, but I mean, I kind of enjoyed it at the same time too, because you get to see the All Stars remakes and things like that too. So, but I mean, it's like, I guess you could take anyone out there and they'd come up with potentially a different list of Mario games to put in it to an extent. But yeah, that's how that came about. And the multiple classic Mario games, like some of those Bornell came up with. There's some that they did not come up with. That was the Mario Hour. Mario Hour's on there too. That was Darbian's category. But that one's on there too. And
I do have to ask, I'm sure you've been asked it before. Have you ever considered doing a Mario Hour run with all of the different Mario games that you run?
If I can convince myself to learn how to do 1 star in SM64, that's kind of the holdback with that is, I already know all the other categories. I've known all the other categories for years, which actually Pentathlon 80% is Mario Hour without the SM64. So I know all the other categories. It's just SM64. I don't have like a flash cart to practice that, and I'd have to learn how to do the. I guess the biggest thing is how to do that trick where you clip through the door in the basement and all that stuff.
Yes.
Like I had to learn stuff like that, and it looks extremely frustrating to learn.
Getting cameras set up correctly so you can clip it. I mean, I'm with you. I've never attempted a 3D speed run, and that would be the one that I might consider myself just for a Mario Hour run. But like it's a whole different way of thinking, I guess, of doing something, right? It's like, it's not something I would normally do.
But yeah, it's just that's what's held me back for that is, if I get a flash cart and I decide to put some time into it, then yeah, I'd like to try to do some runs with that. It's just been every time I look at it and it's like, oh, I got to learn that. I'm like, maybe in a few months. But at some point I'll probably try to learn it.
Having done this for basically around 10 years at this point, I noticed that you're still attempting these runs and still doing this stuff. Are you ever it doesn't seem like you're getting bored of it. Is it something you still enjoy doing?
It's I kind of switched things around a little bit. I haven't done many All-Stars runs here in a few months. I did one earlier this week, but I've actually been focused on trying to get a 52 in SMB3 for some time now, because I did they had a tournament a little while back, and I've been trying to get a 52, and it's being SMB3 with its wonderful RNG, and it keeps robbing me of a 52 time. I lost one last night because my PB has 2 hands in it, and I was like, and when I got to World 8, and I was like, well, if I get one or 0 hands and stuff, I can get a 52. Nope, I got 2 hands. So,
dude,
that's been the story of my attempts with that game. It's either I get too many hands, or I have to take like an absurd number of attempts for 7-1 or something like that. So it's like I'm on the brink of getting that, because the goal that I have set in mind for that is like, once I get a 52 of anything, I'll just put the category aside for a while, and I'll come back for it at some point and maybe try to go for a 51 and learn some of the more difficult strats. But yeah, with All Stars, it's taken a bit of a backseat for a little while, just because you know, as much as I do enjoy running the categories, I do have to take breaks from it from time to time. As you know, I'm sure a lot of people would love it if that's the only thing I ever did, but mentality wise, I can't always do it. You know, you got to take breaks.
Totally. You know, between your day job and streaming, I mean, because you still stream all the time, it seems like. So I'm curious, do you get a chance to do any sort of gaming outside of streaming or anything like that? Are there some games that you enjoy out that are more modern games outside of classic Mario stuff?
Not a whole lot these days. Sometimes there's a few things I get in. I've got a group of friends. We actually, I need to start bugging them and see if we can start playing it again occasionally. We're pretty big into Age of Empires 2 there for a while. Like cool. The newer definitive edition.
Yeah.
But I've got some other streamer friends that we have a group with that we play in voice chat occasionally. So, but I don't. Outside of that, I don't do a ton outside of streaming. So, but we do play that.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I've never played an Age of Empires game, but I've heard the definitive editions are actually really quite good. Any recommendations there on if you were to start, what would be like your first game to play?
As far as like the Age of Empires series, Age of Empires 2 is by far the more popular.
Okay.
Out of the three. I never played 1 that much, and 3 I played some, which it was all right, but it didn't have as much, I guess, charm as the second one did. I guess different eras and time is I guess part of it too. But it's but yeah, it's one of your classic RTS type games and stuff. I guess you could compare it to like StarCraft and things. It does have somewhat of a steep learning curve to learn the game, but it's a lot of fun too, and it's got a ton of different civilizations you can play with and things like that. But it's a lot of fun. It's mostly about hanging out with some friends and stuff like that too.
The social part, totally get that. Okay, it came up in the chat. So both you and I we have pets in the room as we speak. What kind of dog do you have, and what's the dog's name?
I have Smokey. He is a Pyrenees Lab mix, and
you don't have to wake up. So
there he is. Hi.
He must have heard you. Oh, there he is. Hey.
Come on, get up here. I'll give you a cookie if you hop up here. Come on.
Will he do it? How old's Smokey?
Come on, get up here. Up.
How old is Smokey?
Come on, up. There we go.
There he is.
So this is Smokey. He is 10 years old.
Aw.
You're pretty much the same age as my stream is. But you turned 10 years old a few weeks ago, and you're still going. We got to do your birthday sometime soon and stuff. We got to get you a cake and cook you a steak and all that stuff too that we usually do for your birthday. He's excited for that. High five. Oh, high five. High five.
He definitely makes appearances during your streams, I've noticed.
Yeah, he does.
Oh.
You want a cookie? That's it.
Hey.
Oh yeah, you can see him on there.
Totally can see him, yeah.
Catch.
Oh, man.
Or not.
Almost got it.
He's not the best at catching stuff. He tries. But he found it. So, but yeah, he's my stream buddy. So we feed him treats and cookies and things like that.
Always been a dog person, or is that something later on in life for you?
What's that?
Have you always been a dog person, or is that later on in life for you?
I mean, I had a few dogs when I was a kid, but this is actually the first dog I've had as an adult. Well, actually, really the first pet in general I've had as an adult. But yeah, I'd say I've turned into a dog person. I didn't hardly know what to do with him because he was kind of a surprise. I didn't hardly know what to do with him to begin with, but I got it figured out, and he's a pretty good boy most of the time. Right.
I do got to ask you, because this is it's literally on your, if you go on Twitch and you see your about thing, that you mentioned that you're a speedrunner with a Southern accent, and it's where are you in the world, and how do you still have your accent by living someplace else? Hasn't gotten rid of it, huh?
So I'm originally from Virginia in the Appalachians, so I live close to North Carolina and Tennessee.
Yeah.
So actually the closest big city to me was Charlotte, Charlotte, North Carolina. But I moved out to Denver about 6.5 years ago, and my accent has diminished somewhat from what people have told me compared to what it used to be. My speech is sped up a bit, and just the accent in general has probably diminished a little bit. But the reason I still have this much of an accent is I found out pretty quickly after I moved out here that people actually like it.
Oh,
so
cool,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, okay, cool. So, because I'd always kind of had those concerns about people poking fun at me and stuff. Thinking I was like some uneducated hick or whatever, and they didn't know anything and stuff like that too. And then I come out here and it's like most people are like really enjoyed the accent and stuff too, that I feel like sometimes people would keep asking me questions just to hear me speak. So, I kind of got that vibe from some people.
Oh,
so.
man.
But yeah, I found out pretty quickly that people out here actually really enjoy it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to make an effort to change it, and going to let it do whatever. So, but yeah, that's kind of how that went about.
It's very cool. I'm glad it's also kind of cool to own not own it. What's the word I want to say? It's like just don't be afraid of it. I guess I don't know what the words I'm trying to look for, but I appreciate that you just put that out there, and it's like it's part of who you are and everything. And I think I don't know how you feel, but I never feel like I have an accent until I go someplace that doesn't that people aren't from California or whatever. That you realize everyone has an accent just as local to there, and you probably don't even sound like you have one. So.
Right, yeah.
Oh, look at there, Smokey. Well,
you want another one? You want a carrot? I'll give you a carrot. I think I got a carrot down here for you.
Dog hug.
Come on.
Oh my gosh, a full carrot. Oh man. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, my dogs love carrots too. But I got tiny little dachshunds, so they're 10 pounds each. They're small little dogs.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking us through what it's like to run these games. Because I'm still, even after I'm hearing you describe it and all the history you've gone through it, it's still, I got to tell you, I'm still a little intimidated, but at least I'm a little less intimidated after hearing you talk through it. So
it's really the biggest thing about it is just, decide to pick it up and just give it a run through and time it and, work on it a little bit. And I mean, at least with most games and categories and stuff too, is like, you're going to get, some fairly easy PBs like the first few times you run it back. So it's just it's one of those things of it takes time to kind of build up. Well, if you're doing I mean, I guess endurance is one thing about it too, but it does take some time to get used to, playing for that long and switching between physics between like 4 or 5 different games and stuff. It doesn't come easy for most people, and it didn't come easy necessarily for me to start off with either. It's just I've been doing this for so long that I just don't think about that anymore. So, but it's just one of those things. If you're interested in it, just pick it up and give it a try. And for the individual games, there's plenty of people around that can typically answer questions you have about the specific games and stuff like that too.
The nice thing about Mario games is that there's some really a lot of community out there for for questions and educational stuff and guides. I mean, if you go on SMB1's, I mean, any of the leaderboards, you'll see all these games have guides to them nowadays, which is pretty freaking cool, to say the least. If people have never seen your stream or they want to watch, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on Twitch, and my username is roopert83, so it's ROOPERT 83. I typically stream, since I've started a new job and I've got a few things kind of floating around in flux right now, it's a little inconsistent, but typically my current schedule is I try to stream during the week. It'd be several nights a week starting at around what is it in Eastern time, like 9:30 Eastern roughly, which is like 7:30 my time. Sometimes I get a little started later with that right now, and then sometimes I take the night off just because of everything going on, but that's typically how that is. And Saturdays is usually try to stream around the same time, and Sundays, if I stream, I usually try to stream earlier for the East Coast crowd. So I start about 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays, rather. But that's where you can find me, and I do obviously lots of Mario speedruns, but we do some occasional other stuff like Link to the Past Randomizer, and some once in a while we'll do community stuff with like Mario Kart 8 races and things like that. So, but and then we give the dog treats.
Yes, there is a dog cam. In case you, yeah, if that's your thing, there's definitely a doggy camera. It's awesome. Well, thanks again, Rupert. I appreciate the time, and I can't wait to watch the next one and see the next few attempts. It's going to be awesome. So thanks so much for taking the time, and it's been nice talking with you, man.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I don't think this is going to go live this week. It's probably going to go live next week, just to give you kind of heads up, and I'll tag in stuff like that if you want to share with your community.
Okay.
Stuff. So, but honestly, dude, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a lot of fun.
Alrighty, appreciate it.
Hey, you too, man. Have a good one.
Yep, you too.
Okay, and let's see. Well, folks, thanks so much for hanging out. So typically we try to do the live streams on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, but obviously based on people's schedules and things like that, it's been consistent. But this one will replay on Wednesday in case you missed part of it, and then you can watch everything. Let's see if I can type a link into the chat here. Hang on one. Sequencebreakpodcast.com. Did it let? Okay, cool. Hopefully that gets seen. I don't know if it does, but if there's at this point done this for 85 other folks, we have 85 other interviews on the sequencebreakpodcast.com. You can go check them out all there. I'm into a lot of retro stuff and history stuff, so a lot of the times the conversations are about people who have been doing this for quite a while, but I'm getting a little bit better. I've gotten a little bit better about some newer stuff. There's one on some Dark Souls. Let's see, what else? What other more modern games? I think I did one on Celeste. Yeah, TGH chucked some Celeste. There's some other modern games in there a little bit, but it's been a pleasure having you all in the chat. Thank you so much. The podcast version releases on YouTube, and I try to do it at least every other week. Sometimes it does it once a week, but usually on Wednesday or Thursday mornings. I guess it would be Thursday mornings. As you can tell, I'm a little bit inconsistent. I try to get better a bit, but day job responsibilities and taking care of 2 dogs. I blame it on my puppy. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm just trying to make excuses at this point. So anyway, folks, thanks so much for hanging out. Much appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and go speedrun. Go play some games. I don't know. Go enjoy, or go outside. If you're in California, it's really nice, but I hear the weather is shit a lot of other places. So stay safe out there. Have a good weekend, and I will talk to you in the next one. See you in the next one. Adios. Bye-bye. Adios. Take care. Thank you.